President Trump marked this National Day of Prayer with an event in the Rose Garden as his support among white Christian evangelicals is at an all-time high. The annual event stood in contrast to the other news of the day we've been discussing of Mr. Trump's payments to an adult film actress. William Brangham has more.
Joining me now is a leader amongst American evangelicals, a man who has prayed with and prayed for President Trump. Reverend Samuel Rodriguez is president of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference, and he has served as an advisor in various capacities to Presidents Bush, Obama, and now President Trump. Welcome to the NewsHour.
Thank you for having me.
So the president was here for National Prayer Day. He met with many leaders of the faith community. You are in that inner circle. As we were saying before, the president has enormous support among the evangelical community. And I wonder if you could just help me understand, where does that support come from?
Public policy. Evangelicals experience or felt that in the past number of years, the past 10 years, issues of religious liberty, issues of advancing their Judeo-Christian value system stood in a de facto and de jure manner, for that fact, threatened. Sisters of the Poor, Hobby Lobby, Supreme Court cases that to evangelicals infringed their ability to advance the gospel of Jesus. So all of a sudden we have President Donald Trump. And the public policy initiatives as it pertains to faith is much more favorable to the evangelical community indeed.
There's many things on that one side of the ledger that would seem to alienate him from the evangelical community. 3 marriages, accusations of adultery, bragging about sexual assault. You're arguing that the policy side of the ledger is enough to make people think that those things don't matter as much?
No, I don't think it's ever to a point where it doesn't matter. I think it comes to the point where we don't want to write anyone off. You don't want to write off access to a president who can impact religious liberty, who can impact the sanctity of life. So it's a matter of balancing these narratives in a way where we never sacrifice truth on the altar of expediency, but we likewise support policies that reflect our Judeo-Christian value system.
So it was something much more fundamental to evangelicals when they looked at this last election, President Trump versus Hillary Clinton, that they just felt something much more fundamental was at stake. That made them want to support
Some would argue the future of American Christianity. Some argue.
Is that right?
Absolutely. It became that sort of canopy, the impetus behind it, putting the personalities aside, the imperative, what's at stake here? I mean, put it in perspective, religious liberty, sacrificing your conscience on the altar of politics, government obligating you to somehow put away your belief system if you work in a hospital, whatever that may be. There were a number of issues that prompted 81% of evangelicals to support Donald Trump.
How much of a role did abortion play, do you think?
Significant. And I mean, arguably in the top 2, right next to religious liberty. Even in the Latino evangelical community, there are 29, 30%, whatever number you want to embrace, of Latinos supported President Trump. When asked in the exit polling what drove Latinos to support President Trump, it was life.
There were, as you well know, many people in your own congregation that didn't like your support of the president, largely on the issue of immigration, I believe. And I know you have differed with the president on some of his stances on immigration. What do you say to him?
In my particular congregation, I pastor a very multi-ethnic congregation, 40% African American, 40% white, 20% Asian and Latino. So I received, on a stack of Bibles, no pushback in my personal congregation because they saw me there with Obama.
No pushback to your support of Trump?
No, I never endorsed Donald Trump for his presidency. To me, it's a continuum of George W. Bush, President Obama for 8 years, and now President Trump. I disagreed with President Obama on a number of issues. I mean, really, respectfully disagreed with him, but I love the man and respect the man. Likewise with George W. Bush. So my congregation sees it as continuity in what they would deem as a prophetic role, to speak truth to power, to advance an agenda of love and truth and grace, for immigration reform, educational equality, preserving life in and out of the womb. To them, there's a continuum taking place here.
One of the issues with regards to immigration is the issue of DACA and these 700,000 or 800,000 young people that were brought to America as children. You described it as morally reprehensible, the way that they are being treated now by our legislators. When you talk to President Trump about this, what do you say to him about that?
I'm able to speak to the president about these issues, and if not the president, his team. And the pushback, not even the pushback, the answer has been, Reverend, I love these young men and women.
He's used that language.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, the president looked at me and said, I'm a father and a grandfather. Reverend, and I get it. And I don't want to do anything to harm these young men and women, to me. So I heard that from the President of the United States.
But then how do you
and then you heard him subsequently talk about a love agenda regarding these young men and women.
How do you reconcile then President Trump talking about a love agenda with regards to DACA with his other rhetoric about immigrants, which many have called toxic rhetoric?
Yeah, and on a number of occasions, I have expressed in a very respectful manner my displeasure with comments and even wording phrases that do not line up with what I believe is a viable, sustainable message of love and hope and compassion. So it's, it's a conundrum. And there seems to be, not a dichotomy, but there seems to be this sort of balancing act that takes place. And at the end of the day, what do I care about? Public policy. I care about what does the president sign in the Rose Garden? Will these men and women who are created in the image of God be deported? Will they be protected? Will there be a pathway for legalization, inevitably for citizenship? That right there is what drives me to do what I do. So I understand it. It's by the grace of God I'm there, but I have had conversations with the president where he has celebrated, affirmed, validated the immigrant community in America.
Reverend Rodriguez, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.